Good morning, and welcome to online worship with the First Parish of Sudbury, Unitarian Universalist. There is a button below this window that enables you to receive the order of worship, so please click on it to follow along. What you'll notice also in the order of worship are the words to all of our music this morning. So just roll down with your mouse or your finger on the iPad and take a look at those words as the music is played. Our meeting house has been a gathering place for our evolving congregation for over 380 years. It's a long time. To ensure the health and well-being of our members and friends, we have moved online for the time being while we hold our meeting house in our hearts and minds as an anchor to our commitment and faith with one another. Wherever or however we gather, we endeavor to create a space where all are welcome, whether one is a longtime member or if you just found your way here this morning. Each and all of you are encouraged to safely bring your whole self to this forum, all of your respective beliefs, identities, gladness, and sorrows. Leave nothing about yourself behind. We are so happy that you are with us this morning. You, my dear friends, are most precious. So this morning, as we gather in love, we gather to support one another, and we gather with compassion for one and all. Even though we are not sitting side by side this morning, we realize that we travel this journey of courage, hope, and faith, as well as love, together. This morning's reading was written by Lynn Unger on March 20th of this year. It's called Imagine. Imagine with me for a moment. Don't worry, I'm not saying it's real. Imagine, if you can, that there has been not a calamity, but a great awakening. Pretend, just for a moment, that we also loved our threatened Earth, that we stopped going on cruises, limited international flights, worked on cherishing the places where we already are. In this pretty fantasy, everyone who possibly can stops commuting, spends the extra time with their kids or pets or garden. We have the revelation that everyone needs healthcare, sick leave, steady work. It occurs to us that healthcare workers are heroes, also teachers, not to mention the artists of all kinds who teach us resilience and joy. Imagine, if you will, that we turn to our neighbors in mutual aid, trading eggs for milk, checking in on those who are elderly or alone. Imagine that each of us felt suddenly called to wonder, in this moment, what does the world need from me? What are my gifts? Yes, I know it's just a fantasy. The world could never change so radically overnight. But imagine. This morning we light our chalice. Please join me from right where you are in our unison chalice lighting. We seek our place in the world, and the answers to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths. This morning, our reading is a quote, or maybe better considered a reflection, by Kenny Wiley about Maya Angelou. Maya turned 40 on April 4th, 1968. She had planned a big party in Harlem, with many of the day's Black intellectual elite among the guests. History had other ideas, though. Dr. King's assassination sent Angelou into a weeks-long depression. It was fellow writer James Baldwin who helped her to dig out of it. Angelou recalls Baldwin's assistance in her book, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, where she writes that laughter and ancestral guidance got her through. There was very little conversation. The times were so solemn and the daily news so somber that we snatched mirth from unlikely places, gave servings of it to one another with both hands. I told Jimmy I was so glad to laugh. Jimmy said, "We survived slavery. You know how we survived? We put surviving into our poems and into our songs, put it into our folk tales. We danced surviving in Congo Square in New Orleans, put it in our pots when we cooked pinto beans. We knew if we wanted to survive, we'd better lift up our own spirits. So we laughed whenever we got the chance." This morning's sermon is entitled On the Road to Find Out. Welcome to the week of Palm Sunday, Passover, and Easter, that I affectionately call Holy Week, or maybe Holy Moly Week. I'm guessing that the holy part made some of you cringe, but don't touch that dial. Let's dare to take this journey together, because it includes some interesting stories. This is a week that historically included moments of joy, moments of uncertainty, maybe even moments of discomfort, pain, and death. It is remembered as a time of moving towards our humankind's deepest fears, begging, pleading, and praying for the worst to literally pass over. It is a time when thousands of people experienced and embraced the worst, only to be transformed by it, wandering in the desert, or in rare cases being resurrected to emerge from the metaphorical tomb of one's deepest darkness. Sounds like fun, right? No, but it's worth the time to contemplate. I want to begin by acknowledging that as Unitarian Universalists, I know that we may not all be compelled by Christian mythology and the wisdom that it may hold. But in many ways, it is what might be considered the current Western vernacular, and thus this morning I wade in somewhat reluctantly, realizing that some of this may not resonate right off the bat, but I do think it will offer insight. So I ask your patience and your open mind and your open heart. Some of these religious traditions, many of us have discarded for good reason, except for Easter. Who would ever discard the Easter bunny and chocolate? I mean, really? Never. I discarded Palm Sunday a long time ago, but over the years, I brought it back. And I brought back the whole week in my own unique way. That's what I want to share with you this morning, the why of embracing this week. Why would one want to reconsider something that we have put aside? To begin with, there are a lot of parallels between our current world reality and that of ancient mythology. Injustice, plagues, political unrest, socioeconomic influences, bad guys, and some heroes. Many years ago, after leaving the Catholic Church and before entering seminary, I challenged myself to better understand my reservations with regard to Christian mythology. My reticence began with the fact that I was force-fed from the very beginning on a diet of something that I did not have the stomach for. Crucifixes with bleeding Jesus adorned my childhood home. CCD, or Catholic religious education, no exploration allowed, and a host of holidays that were confusing because, in my personal opinion, they were largely pagan in nature, but wrapped in colorful paper that obscured the truth. We, all the good little Catholic children, would receive just enough information, but not enough to know better or to understand, really. I always felt like there was a story going on in the background that was only known by the clergy, but was not being shared with the faithful. I felt empowered as a Unitarian Universalist with the conviction to understand the difference between history and mythology. I was able to reimagine and embrace this week between Palm Sunday, Passover, and Easter into a tradition that I wanted to claim as my own. You see, I unwrapped the religion away from the truth, kind of like a gift. And within, I found a resonance about this week that I could embrace, and the knowledge helped me to evolve. I read between the biblical lines, seeing and understanding the important wisdom within the story. In plain language, most of us have experienced a dark night of a soul, a time in our lives when we faced an experience that tested us beyond our ability to reason and tolerate. The stories from this week are all about dark night of the soul experience. Hence, if we remove the religiosity of this week, We can see the underlying truth and maybe resonate with it all just a bit. For example, the pandemic that we face in our world today could be seen as one such experience. Facing the trials and tribulations of a condition that is beyond our control. So we learn to let go in order to be here now, in this moment. As I shared last week, 9/11 was another such experience. Throughout human history, there have been many opportunities, including the loss of a loved one or a job. With that said, even positive experiences can force us to give up control, force us to reimagine our meaning-making framework, such as the birth of a child, a new career, or even retirement. To complete my bachelor's degree, I was required to write an honors thesis, motivated by the losses and gains that I had endured in my life. I chose to research and write about the concept of the dark night of the soul as a gateway to inherent wisdom. That thesis was entitled Crisis, an Opportunity for Transformation. I focused on the various ways that we can look at our experiences, find life-affirming meaning within them. I interviewed a slew of people who had lived through awful experiences, homelessness, loss of identity, unspeakable violence, torture, and so on. The stories were gruesome. Each person I interviewed confirmed that the wisdom that they gained from those experiences made them worth it. They would not trade those experiences if required to give up the transformative knowledge that they had gained. After assimilating the experiences, they felt that they had a deeper, more comprehensive understanding of life itself. I'd like to share with you some thoughts from that thesis. We face our most difficult moments in life when the fear, pain, and suffering are so acute that we are unsure of our survival as we know it. Many people reach for ways to alleviate their suffering through displacement, drinking, drugging, eating to excess, exercise, you name it, while others will choose to sit in the fire, to face the fear, pain, and uncertainty of life's challenges head on. Chris Bach describes the dark night of the soul as a stage that is reached only after lesser difficulties have been navigated, like getting food, having a home, getting health care, or having health, basic necessities. Then comes a stage that represents surrender, that is often experienced as the death of everything that keeps us small. Bach considers this death a sense of separation from what we have known about ourselves up to that point, followed by a rebirth of a more encompassing sense of self, with a capital S. Author Catherine Brihoni, in her book After the Darkest Hour, describes this experience as the mythological hero's journey, based on the work of Joseph Campbell. She shares that somehow the hero is drawn out of her ordinary life, where she has some measure of control. Occasionally, she makes this decision to venture out voluntarily, but most often, she's carried off or plunged onto the threshold of adventure by an experience that rocks her world. Building on this, I put forth in my thesis that the hero, male or female, or genderless, faces a separation from everything that is familiar and has a sense that the original understanding she had of her personal framework is in flux. Our very identity is in flux or in danger of changing. During the journey, the hero will be tested, will be forced to face challenges, and in some ways, their deepest fears. The hero may instinctively try to outrun or outsmart her need to evolve, but eventually she must face facts. We can see these same types of life-challenging journeys in movies, children's books, and sacred texts, where the hero faces their nemesis or a challenge that they truly dread. I learned through research and writing that even during the darkest night of the soul, a place of wisdom could be found if we dared to journey within. That found or cultivated wisdom acts like a balm that soothes us. It can relieve anxiety, give us a sense of confidence on the journey. As we unpack where we are intellectually, emotionally, or physically in the moment, that place that seemed inconceivable starts to become clear and make a bit more sense. How might we find wisdom in the clutches of the darkest night? It all begins with our willingness and ability to move into the marrow of the challenges that we face, to seek and find meaning within them. The key in this phase is, in order to evolve our story, we must literally evolve, which in turn enables our framework to evolve. And thus one is able to come out on the other side changed, holding newfound wisdom and maybe even a sense of joy as we emerge out of the metaphorical tomb. How many years have we heard and worried about an impending pandemic that might sweep the world? Whoop, here it is. What are we going to do? Here we are in full-blown worldwide pandemic mode. Are we captives of our fear? We face difficult times with feelings of fear, unimaginable suffering going on all around us. Our world has become small. Our lives have become even smaller. We are surviving, trying to find the basic necessities of life. This is our reality now. And for now, that's okay. But I ask us, what is it that we each need and want to learn from this experience? How can we each be called to service in this experience? I know many of you are doing so much, sewing face masks, helping people with food, doing whatever we can. That's the work that we're called to do. When we feel like this, that feeling that we are holding inside right now, physically, mentally, emotionally, this feeling is a marker. It's a sign to us that an opportunity for transformation is within our midst or our grasp. So what, might you be wondering, does Holy Week have to do with our personal transformation? Therein lies the brilliance of the Passion of the Christ, or the Exodus from Egypt, led by Moses and Aaron. They are both stories about suffering, and yet they are also stories about love, peace, magic, and miracles. They are stories about a journey, about facing insurmountable odds, about parting seas and turning water into wine and bringing Lazarus back from the dead. One story is about a Jewish boy, Moses, found in a reed basket floating down the Nile, brought up as a prince. The other is a hero's journey of Jesus, a carpenter's kid who left home, made friends, crossed lines of division, and did the right thing in calling for justice when he encountered inequality in life. The pinnacle of both stories come to fruition during this 1 week. So what is it about this week? Why this week? These events took place during the Paschal, derived from the word Pascha, a transliteration of the Aramaic word meaning Passover, full moon, which is the first full moon after the spring equinox. Thus, Passover and Easter adjust every year based on the full moon. Today, on Palm Sunday, the story that is shared is that Jesus arrived riding on a donkey to the city of David, Jerusalem, also known as the city of peace, city of culture, crossroads, a gathering place of many different peoples. Think lots of trade, diversity, and socioeconomic strata. There were Roman rulers and leagues of Roman soldiers, and there were the various religious political groups, including the two most prominent, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And then there was a third, the Essenes. Outside of the Romans who were pagan, all were Jewish. I like to imagine them as, okay, this is a stretch, the Catholics, the Congregationalists, and the UUs. We would be the Essenes, minus, I hate to say it, the celibacy. These groups or factions made Judaism much more complicated in Jerusalem. Each had different aims and resided in different positions of leadership. For example, the Pharisees were members of the middle class. They were the Jewish families that were committed to upholding Mosaic law. Think of them as the Orthodox. The Sadducees, on the other hand, were members of the Jewish aristocracy. They had wealth and influence and wanted to maintain the status quo. The Essenes, explained a Jewish historian, existed in large numbers, and thousands lived throughout Roman Judea, but they were fewer in number than the Pharisees and Sadducees. The Essenes, keeper of the Dead Sea Scrolls, lived in various cities, but congregated in communal life dedicated to voluntary poverty, daily immersion, and asceticism. Their priestly class practiced celibacy. There is no certainty that Jesus was an Essene. but it would explain why he was feared and persecuted in the story. There is some scholarly belief that he was at least influenced by the Essenes and thus was considered an outlier. On Palm Sunday, Jesus was greeted by the people, and I'm guessing that they were a mixture of Pharisees, some of whom were open to the teachings of Jesus, and the Essenes. They saw Jesus as the Messiah, and his arrival at the time was of liberation, to lift them out of their marginalization. Thus, it was a time of joy and expectation. Jesus traveled to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. "Let my people go" would have been his rallying cry, built on Moses's and Aaron's Exodus story. Jesus called the Sadducee aristocracy and the Romans to atone for the sins against the people and God that they were committing. His arrival on a donkey was thought to be the prophecy realized, and the timing at Passover struck fear in the hearts of the Jewish aristocracy in Jerusalem. For me, this week offers a story of arriving, being welcomed with open arms, to walk upon palm fronds strewn on the streets, to shouts of welcome, exultation, music, and celebration, true joy. But within days, the tide turns, and Jesus is seen as a rabble-rouser, too powerful to live. His actions were seen as challenges to authority, making powerful leaders feel intolerant of peace, intolerant of love, intolerant of the call for social justice. Then things move from bad to worse, and the story of Jesus' darkest night of the soul begins to unfold. The story goes on that Jesus felt a sense of isolation, struggling with his inner demons, was persecuted, betrayed by those closest to him, tried and sent to certain death. But that, thankfully, is not where his story ends. And this is where the good news resides. After facing the worst, facing death, the ultimate fear, and yet surviving, we have the opportunity to emerge from the tomb. It is the wisdom that is revealed, that is transforming. One is awakened, literally enlightened by the experience. When one faces their fears in an experience that is known as the darkest night, those fears no longer have power over us. Hence, we are resurrected from the ashes of the unknown into the wisdom and confidence of the known. I believe that when we survive this pandemic and have knowledge of it, it can no longer control us. We have the opportunity to be reborn at the full moon because the light pushes back the darkness, showing all that there is to see. This week for me is all about a commitment to shine my light into those dark, fear, and anxiety-filled places in order to transform myself and all of us by what we see. It is then that we shall know the truth, and the truth shall make us free. Closing, I wanted to share some thoughts from Khalil Gibran, also known as the author of The Prophet, who uncovered the interdependent connection between joy and sorrow. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. The self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that it is that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow. And others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come. When one sits alone with you at the board, remember that the other is asleep under your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty, at standstill, you are balanced. I invite you to take a moment in silent meditation and prayer. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. We thank you for your generosity, dear friends. I know that fear is a way to stall us from doing lots of things, but I was part of the auction last night. You'll hear more about that today, but the generosity is flowing, and I just thank you for that. So at this time, let us do our unison chalice extinguishing. Please join me in saying our unison extinguishing the chalice, located in the order of worship. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for gathering with us for this online worship this morning. While we are meeting online, we will be offering the opportunity to gather to share milestones and announcements directly after, as is our tradition, the postlude. After the music stops, please click the coffee hour button below this screen, next to the order of worship and the little offering buttons, and you will be moved into a Zoom room. Let me share with you some closing words. We move back into our lives, blessed by our connections to one another, to the spirit of life. Dear friends, walk lightly, that you see the life that is below your feet. Spread your arms as if you had wings, could dance through the air. Feel the joy of the breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing on this earth. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.